Hello, all. Thank you for joining us today on a Saturday morning. Like in a game of football, the pitch is your financial stage where scoring goals brings you success, right? But it isn't an easy thing to do. You have so many obstacles to run by, so many tackles to avoid, so many dribbles and nutmegs to make. So what should one do to ensure that they achieve their goal? So today we have our financial planners, Janaki Raman and Vinayak, taking the presentation. Without wasting any more time, I'll pass on the podium to them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tarun, for the brief intro. So again, welcome all to our financial planning webinar. So today we are about to kick off with a game-changing approach and securing your financial future. Today we'll be actually exploring the entire financial journey as a 90 minutes of football match. So let's think of your financial journey as a high stakes in a 90 minutes football match, where every move counts, right? And even the goal is to secure your financial well-being. So you can consider your assets as a players on the field, each with a unique role to play in achieving your financial goals and the synergy between your investments, just like a well-coordinated team. So it's essential in success. So let's blow the whistle and start with a financial game plan. So Nakul, you can move on to the next slide. So okay, now let's start with the basics and set it right. Let's talk about substitute players on the bench. Your substitute players are your financial safety net. They are ready to step on the field when the game takes an unexpected turn because there can be any contingencies or any financial setback that can arise in anyone's life, right? So much like a substitute can provide fresh energy and skills. Your emergency reserve is there to bring stability and security to your financial strategy. So that even if there is any financial setback, it won't impact your financial goal. So you might ask, it's like what would be an ideal emergency reserve and why should we maintain an ideal emergency reserve or contingency reserve? So if there is any financial setback or as of such, most of the investors would go and rush into your investments and it's like withdraw from there and take it towards their emergency. But that would actually affect and like impact the compounding towards your financial goals. So in that case, according to financial planning thumb rule, the ideal contingency reserve should be your 6 months to your 12 months of your expenses. So where can you park it actually? It can be in cash equivalents, liquid funds, short-term debt funds, or a fixed deposit. So every investment avenue has its pros and cons, but we would recommend you it's like having 50% allocation in a sweep FD or 50% allocation into a short-term debt instrument. That would be an ideal emergency reserve. So moving on to the next slide. So what about a goalkeeper? So the vital role of a goalkeeper is actually standing and guarding and ready to make it's like crucial saves, right? So having an emergency reserve and having an insurance right before starting any investments would be a great risk management tool and that everyone should have. So even if you are young, even if you are old, if you have dependents, having a term insurance policy is at most important. So you may ask, it's like what would be an ideal term insurance cover? So you can actually figure out that by doing a human life value calculation. So with human life value calculation, what we figure out is based on a current annual income and a current annual expenses, what would be the corpus that your dependents will need if something mishap happens to you? So it can be also, it's like there's a general rule of thumb. It's like if your annual CTC is suppose 5 lakh into 30. So that would be a term insurance cover. So there are a lot of ways to calculate and figure out what would be the optimal term insurance cover. You can reach out to our team and figure out if you're undervalued, underinsured, and get your term insurance with us. Also, apart from that, having a health insurance policy. A lot of people, a lot of employees have a corporate sponsored health insurance cover, right? But what people are not aware of is it's like once they leave the job, the corporate health insurance cover would actually fall in. So if any medical emergency will pop up during that period where when you left your job, it's like you won't have any medical insurance cover. So what would be optimal is you can actually get a individual health insurance cover if you are single, and if you have a family, you can actually get a comprehensive health insurance policy. And also, there are very important thing. It's like you can consider when taking a term insurance is something called a critical illness policy as a rider to your term insurance. So you may ask, what is a critical illness insurance? So for any health insurance, it's like it will cover your basic necessities and basic medical expenses. But if there are any, it's like critical stages of like illness, something called as cancer or other diseases and everything, at that time the critical insurance cover will kick in, and whatever your expenses would be, if you're suppose having a critical illness cover of 20 lakhs, the entire 20 lakhs would be paid out as lump sum to you. So in that case, what is the benefit of taking it as a rider to your term insurance policy? So if you individually take a critical illness policy alone, so it would actually, the premiums would actually increase every 3 to 5 years by 10 to 15%. So apart from that, if you're taking it as a rider to your term insurance policy, the entire premium you would be fixed till your retirement and would be fixed till your lifetime. So in that case, having a term insurance with rider policies and having a pure health insurance is actually very important. So also there are a lot of benefits having a term insurance policy at a young age. So as and how you grow by when your age increases, the risk increases, right? So in that case, the premiums tend to be low when you are young. So getting a term insurance policy when you're starting out a job or when you're really young, it would be great and it will be helpful because at the end of the day, we'll be mostly most of us will be married and having a family as dependents. So that would be one. Okay, so actually, the thing about having a yellow card as ULIP would be like the yellow card actually symbolizes the caution and degree of risk. So it aligns perfectly with the ULIP policies that are available in the market. Similar to a yellow card, Similar to a yellow card cautioning a player about the potential hazards, a ULIP reminds you the approach you have to take care of. So it actually is a market-linked insurance product. So when you're paying any premiums towards your ULIP policy, a portion of that would be invested in the market, and the portion of that would be it's like invested into your insurance. You will get a basic sum assured cover after 5 7 years. So in that case, it's like why you have to go and lock into something like a ULIP policy when you only get a subpar return by linking market investments and insurance. So if you take something like a term insurance cover and keep your investment separately, it would be actually benefit you in long run. And anyway, it's like having a ULIP policy won't help because there is no liquidity in that. And a lot of charges are also associated with that. Even if you want to exit out the policy, you have to pay certain charges. You have to wait till 5 years for the lock-in to end and everything. So based on that, it's like ULIP policy won't make a big deal and it's not helpful in your financial journey. And we associate it as a yellow card. So moving on to the next. So now the red card players on the field. So whole life and endowment plans. These financial instruments are like a red card signalizing a more severe infraction actually. So it might seem secure initially, but as and how the time goes on, you will see the potential cost rising up, penalizing your financial flexibility in the long run actually. So much like a player sent off, these plans might actually limit your strategic moves. So this whole life and endowment policy are marketed so good. So we'll show it in the next slide. So what they assure is it's like a traditional insurance policy and it would cost you around maybe 10x more than your pure term policies, right? So if you have insurance cover, if you're paying an annual premium of 12,000 and if you're getting a 1 crore term cover, so let's see what we'll get after paying a 22,000 annual premium. So how are these policies actually marketed? 22,000 per year for next 12 years and the end of that get 3.5 lakhs on maturity. What do you feel? Is it that attractive or should you go for it? And it says 12x return guaranteed. So 12x return guaranteed, we'll come to the calculation part. So moving on to the calculation part, when our team sat and reviewed the money back policy, we figured out after paying 22,000 for next 12 years, the total return was just 4%. So it's actually subpar. Your cash, your savings bank balance or recurring deposit will give a better return as of that. Like and you don't have any liquidity in a money back policy or endowment policy. So what if you realize if you have paid your annual premiums for the last 10 years and you wanted to exit the policy? So you see on the screen on the left, it's like 30% of all the premiums paid less first year's premium. So your total premium paid would be approximately 2,27,000. The surrender value would be only 45,000, right? So in case if you have policies like a money back policy or endowment policy, how can you strategically exit it? So there's something called as a paid up option you can consider. So for that, it's like for every policy, there are different conditions. For most of the policies, if you have paid first 3 years of premium, you can actually convert your policy into paid up. So what happens in paid up is you just stop paying the premiums after next year. You can just inform your insurance RM about this and you can convert your policy into paid up. What happens in a paid up policy is You just stop paying a premium, and whatever annual premiums that you pay till now, it will get adjusted to your maturity value. Suppose I'm just paying 22,000 for next 3 years, and I'm actually stopping the policy. Maybe at the end maturity, I'll have to still hold on for 12 years. So after the 12 years, I might get somewhere around 75,000 to 80,000. So in that case, actually, you can go and reinvest this 22,000 into something like a better investment avenue, and you can actually like exit out of this money back policy. Yeah. So yeah, in a football match also there are a lot of brutal attacks that happens. It's like even if Messi or Ronaldo runs, there are a lot of defenders chasing them, right? So similarly, without proper knowledge and a bad financial product can cause a lot of damage to the investors. So the products are something like a ULIP, small case, LIC policy, and option trading. So there is one more red card. Okay, so most of us get some annual hike, right? So when we get an annual hike, why don't we step up our SIPs? So let's see with a case study or an example. So with a conventional SIP option, so if I'm investing monthly SIP of 50,000 for next 20 years at a fair return assumption of 11%, my total investment would be 1 lakh 20, and my corpus, the final corpus that I'll get would be approximately 4.6 crores. Yeah. So if I had stepped up my SIP every year, so suppose for example I'm getting a 10% of hike every year, and my SIP of 50,000, I just step up by 5,000 every year. So what would be the difference? So if I step up my SIP by 10% for next 20 years, the total corpus that I would made after 20 years would be approximately 7.9 crores, approximately 8 crores. So that is a difference between normal SIP and stepping up your SIP. So this is also one of the red card that people have to be aware of, and we have to start stepping up our SIPs. So okay, so we all have a lot of financial goals, right? For some, it could be maybe children's education, marriage, asset purchase, a large asset purchase, or maybe retirement for sure. So in that, it's like a lot of financial goals. Everyone needs a different bespoke allocation, right? So towards a financial goal, let's see with a case study and let's see what we should do and what should be optimal. Nakul, you can go to next. Yeah. So in this case study, let's see. Meet Ankit and Nita. They are married in the 30s. They are keen to grow the family. They are moved from Lucknow to Bangalore for work. Okay. Their aged parents live in Lucknow. So next. Okay, Ankit as an only child, he's worried about his parents in Lucknow. So his mother had a fall and needed hip replacement surgery. This year, the father needs a cataract surgery too. So what is the best way to support the parents? So we already have certain financial goals in that taking care of the dependents would also be one of the important financial goal, right? So in the next slide, let's figure out what would be the actual steps to be taken by Ankit and Neeta to take care of the dependents. Yeah. So first thing first, it's like we have to set up a medical reserve for our parents. One thing would be having a separate emergency reserve. That emergency reserve would be for me and my family, and the separate medical reserve would actually take care of the expenses, medical expenses of our dependents, because the medicals like needs may spike up like whenever we can't predict it, right? So having set a separate medical reserve would be actually great. Consider hiring a caretaker for taking care of their needs and wants. Apart from that, check for a comprehensive and affordable health insurance policies. Also, it's like when the base cover increases for a older senior citizen, so in that the premiums tend to rise a lot. So in that case, having a setup like separate medical reserve ready would be actually great and helpful. And also, what you can do is you can ideally purchase a separate term insurance cover, individual term insurance cover, and name your parents as a beneficiary. So, in case if they're dependents and if they don't have any pensions coming in, and your monthly cash flow is what they're dependent on, you can actually purchase a term insurance cover because if anything suppose happens to you, the dependents would be taken care of, obviously. So, moving on to the next financial goal, the education goal. So, sending your child to a CBSE school, what would be the cost after 5 to 10 years? Completing an UG in engineering in India, apart from that, UG in medicine in India, and also a PG or masters in US or abroad. So, one thing you have to notice, there's something you have to really consider before building any wealth for the education goal and all would be inflation. So, generally, the inflation in India is roughly approximately 6%. So all your expenses, all the commodities, everything would rise maybe at a rough percentage of 6% every year. But for the education inflation stands at 9%. Yeah, you heard it right. It stands at 9%. So if you compare previous cost of a master's in an IIM and right now this year's master's in an IIM, the jump is somewhere around 10 to 11%. So literally the education inflation in education is the most expensive, and the fees and school fees or master fees, everything tend to rise at a rate of 9 to 10% every year. So in this scenario, it's like how a single digit return giver like a fixed deposit or a recurrent deposit will help you beat this inflation and make your wealth. So for that, obviously there are products called as equity mutual funds, structured equity, where you can invest and build and accumulate your funds towards your education goal. That would be the main thing you have to consider. So yeah, scoring penalties. So getting a penalty in a game and scoring it and getting it right, it's great, right? So it's same like getting a milestone completed and getting that kick in. So what would be achieving a milestone mean like? So everyone is so most of us are already investing, right? And but we are not sure about what financial goal are we investing it towards. So what is the important step to be done is you have to chart down all your financial goals, and priority wise you have to list down what is the highest priority and why what is the lowest priority. So in that approach, when you tick mark one of the like each and every milestone, each or every financial goal, you will get that satisfaction and you will actually create wealth over a long period of time. So that would be a base idea of scoring penalties and achieving a milestone. So moving on to yeah, from here onwards, I'll be passing over to Nakul Janakiraman. He would be continuing the presentation.
Thank you, Vinay. Thank you for that nice introduction. So, right now in a game of soccer, we are kind of completed on our insurance, on our setting up the goals and all those time. Now we're at half time. We played half the game. We may be down one, or maybe we're at 1-1, or maybe even we're up a goal. So how do we kind of tackle this scenario is very, very important. Let's say you are in a game of football and you're up a goal. Let's say you're two, the other team is one. The next start, maybe you don't need to play a lot aggressive. Maybe you can be a little bit defensive. But in the case that maybe you are starting at nil, you haven't scored a goal, but the other team has maybe scored a couple of goals, maybe even 3 goals. Now, at this time, you have to look at maybe going aggressive towards maybe winning the match or maybe even tying the match. So this is where, your financial review or your half time comes in. You have to focus on how far you have come towards your goals. How far you still have to go towards your goals is very, very important. These two things are some of the most important things that you kind of have to do. Now, one more thing that you have to concentrate on is that when you do an annual review or when you do something like a half-time review, is that to see if your investment or the savings amount that you're doing is adequate or not. See, if I'm going to be investing 10 or 50,000 every month, that is good. But what happens if, just like Vinayak outlined, the education goal is maybe requires a crore or maybe even a 1.5 crore if your son or daughter wants to go abroad to study. At that time, it is very, very important to course correct. So what is the course correction here? Instead of increasing the SIP all at once, which might be very difficult for a lot of people, we can go for a step up. We can go for something like an annual bonus where even without a step up, this can contribute towards your goals. So if you're up in the game, if you're maybe let's say you're saving towards the goal, but you're already kind of 60% or 75% of the way there, maybe de-risking some of the corpus and keeping it in safer alternatives like debt mutual funds or fixed deposits or government schemes, maybe that should work. So that is why a review is very, very important, because first it will help you determine whether you need to go aggressive, whether you need to be balanced, or you need to be defensive. Only when you can figure these three things out and you can kind of devise your strategy, you can go full strength ahead. And another thing that people don't kind of take into account is what actions do you need to undertake if the goal amount is much higher than what you can be accumulated. Let's say I have a goal timeline of 5 years and I need a crore. Now the monthly amount that I need to invest would be enormous. But what happens if I can only do maybe 30% of it or 40% of it? then other alternatives need to be considered. Now, this is something that is very often the not we as financial planners see, because people end up taking huge loans, people end up taking huge debt in their name to kind of finance their goals. Now, we'll kind of look at how you can go about this. Is there a compromise that you can arrive at? A compromise as in not on the goal amount, but maybe pushing the goal a little bit forward, maybe increasing your investment, maybe cutting back on some spending. We'll kind of see all that as. Now, coming to the formation. Your formation is your asset allocation. Let's say you're up in a game. Now, you don't have to play very aggressive. You can go for something like a 1-4-4, where your midfield and your defense is kind of well structured, but your attack is not very powerful because you don't need it to be powerful. Your defense on your midfield can kind of help you win the game without taking a lot of risk. But let's say you're not up in a game, you're down nil, and the other team is up 2 or 3 goals. Now, at this time, you need to go forward. You need 3 or 4 people playing in the mid. You need your left and right wings flanking. You need to create more opportunities for yourself so that you can kind of score the goal. So your asset allocation is similarly like that. For someone who's nearing retirement, or someone who's very near to a goal, going all in towards equity or equity related instrument is not probably recommended. But for someone who's early on in their career, who's like 30 or 35 or even 40, who's starting out and their goal is like 10, 12 years away, going aggressive, playing with a very, very attacking formation is what you want to go for, because you can do that now. But you can't do that 2 or 3 years down the line where you're near to your goal. So that is why having an attacking formation or having a defensive formation will all depend on what kind of an asset allocation that you need. That asset allocation will depend on what kind of a goal your need is. Okay, now we'll talk about what is multi-asset investing and why is it going to help you. Now, this kind of quilt that I've displayed is from LiveMint. So what it is, this might look confusing, but let me just give you an example. So just like in football, where there are a lot of formations, even in investing, there are a lot of asset classes. Now you have broadly equities. These are your market linked instruments like mutual funds, stocks, and whatnot. Then you have gold, kind of a favorite of the Indian household. Then you have things like bonds, where they'll give you a fixed return, where they may be on par with inflation, but they won't beat any, they won't win you any races. Then you have things like real estate, where over a period of time, they might give you decent returns, but it has problems like liquidating and stuff like that. Where let's say you have a goal coming up in 2 months, it's very hard to liquidate real estate for that, and you might not even get what you're looking for. Then you have asset classes like international. Now I'd like to maybe gauge your attention towards large caps. So if you look at large caps over a period of 2017 to 2019, they were a bit of consistent performers. But if you look at 2020, they're kind of dropped down. 2021, they're kind of come up. 2022, they have kind of come in. So large caps have kind of been middling the play field all the time. They've kind of been a kind of a balanced allocation. But now let's look at something like the small cap class. 2020, 2021 were a very, very good year for small caps. But what people don't see is the return that small caps generated during 2018 and 2019. So all of this is cyclical, just like your asset allocation, which has to keep changing with your goals and with your formation. So that is why multi-asset investing is where you need to be at. Multi-asset investing will give you a kind of all of your assets in one big basket, where in a year where gold performs, you'll perform. In a year where you'll perform. In a year where certain categories of international funds maybe perform, maybe the US market performs, you'll kind of perform. That is why getting the asset allocation right is very, very important. It doesn't mean over diversification, because getting a good asset allocation means all of your assets are kind of allocated towards each and every goal. Going all in towards equity or going all in towards asset classes like gold doesn't make sense, because you have a lot of goals and you have a lot of asset classes to match them. So putting it all in one will not help you serve your purpose. And now, we've talked about asset allocation. We've talked about how a formation that you need to set and the importance of an annual review. Now, before we kind of go for all of this, there's one thing that we should focus on, which is what works for you might not work for others. Now, I might be someone who wants to go, who doesn't want to go all in on equity. I might be someone where even though I have the capacity to go all in on equity, I would want to maintain maybe 50-60% in equity and maybe put the rest towards safer instruments. That might give me a peace of mind. That might, help me sleep better at night. But you might be a person where, you can take that risk and you are also willing to take that risk. So for every person, this is going to change. So personal finance is truly personal. So that is the only thing that is different about personal finance. Now, personal finance might have some thumb rules, but this won't fit everybody. But one thing that kind of fits everybody is, having an answer to these questions. The first one being, who are your dependents? Do you have like elderly parents? Do you have like parents of your spouse that you need to support? Do you have like a special person that you want to kind of provide for? All of these kind of, you have to note it down so that you know who your dependents are. You know how much you need to save for them. The second question being, how long do you need to support your dependents for? Maybe you need a medical corpus that is far bigger than what you are currently having to support your parents who might be having some pre-existing conditions that might not be covered in a health insurance. See, these things are to be considered very, very much because uh, uh, these are emotional decisions. This will have a very, very big impact in your life. So, at least being prepared in your finances will kind of help you get to that goal much easier than what happens if you are not prepared. The third thing being what you would like to provide them for. Maybe you would like to give your parents a 50,000 or a lakh a month for their own expenses, for their own kind of well-being. So that is up to you. What are your aspirations? See, this is very, very important. Some people would want to start a business. Some people would want to have a hobby that they want to, follow, that they wouldn't want to monetize it. Some people would want to, climb the corporate ladder. So all of these will vary on what you want. Which career stage are you in? Are you a person who is just starting out, where a lot of upskilling is needed, or you're a senior employee where you're a manager, you're a VP, or a person where okay, I've achieved a certain stage. Now what I need to be doing is consolidating my investments, consolidating my portfolio, and seeing how much progress that I've done. How much risk can you afford to take, and how much risk are you willing to take? See, these two are very, very different things. The how much of risk you can afford to take is based on your kind of financial situation that you're kind of having right now. Maybe you want to contribute 50,000 as SIP per month, but what happens if your salary is only 60,000? That leaves you with very little to kind of enjoy life as well. And how much risk are you willing to take? So, for example, I might not be willing to take a lot of risk, even though I have the capacity to take risk. I might be only willing to do 20 or 30,000 SIP, even though I can do much higher. So these are the things which are truly personal. See, before we go ahead, understanding these personal things is very important because you can kind of understand yourself from these personal things. Once you do that, your investing can take a much higher step forward than if you didn't focus on these things. Moving on, rebalancing. Okay, let's say I have a mutual fund portfolio that I've built over the past 5 to 7 years. This is, let's say, even marked towards a goal. Maybe that goal is another 5 years away. Why is rebalancing important? Rebalancing is important because whatever the profits that I've made during this time, I need to capture. Everything is cyclical. So maybe there are new opportunities where these profits can be deployed in a much efficient way, where my portfolio can do much better if it weren't doing this. Maybe the funds that I picked previously, the management has changed. The style that they invest in has also changed. So how they invest towards my goal is also going to ultimately change. So all of these things kind of will tie into a rebalancing and review. So what happens if you have a lot of allocation towards small cap at a time like this? Allocating, maybe selling some of it and allocating, protecting your profits might be recommended as well. So rebalancing and review is very, very important. When we rebalance and review, we can kind of bring your asset allocation information with your goals. So as explained, everything is cyclical. Every asset class is cyclical. So your asset allocation is also going to be affected by these cyclical changes. When the target return, let's say I set a return of 13% from a mutual fund. Let's say it gives me 22% or 23%. Now, maybe that calls for something of a rebalancing where, I don't have to take out the entire amount. Maybe the profits can be rebalanced. How often? Review once in 6 months is highly recommended. Worst case scenario, you at least do it once in a year so that you can align your investments with your goals. Now, we're coming to the last 10 minutes plus the extra time of the game. We're going towards your retirement. How do you go for it? Let's just like in football, where the most coveted trophy of either the Champions League or the Ballon d'Or is important, your retirement is also equally important. Now let's see how we can go about this. Now, there are a few things that you should know. First is, let's say you are 35 and you want to retire at 60. There's still another 25 years for a conventional retirement. Now, you might be someone who's kind of looking at retiring at 50 or 55, maybe even earlier. Let's say your current expenses are around 1.2 lakhs. Now, these expenses might go down in retirement, but it's always good to, plan with a buffer in place. Let's say the inflation rate is around 6-7%. Now, let's see what kind of a corpus that you will require to kind of keep withdrawing the 1.2 lakhs in retirement. Now, the total corpus adjusted for inflation is 11 crores, meaning if you have 11 crores in retirement, you can keep withdrawing the inflation adjusted 1.2 lakhs. So 1.2 lakhs today, probably when you're 60, is going to be around 3 lakhs or 3.5 lakhs. So you need to withdraw it month on month until the age of 85 or 90 to kind of tide in for your expenses. Now, of course, your expenses might go down, it might go up. All of these things are there. Now, the 11 crores might seem like a very huge amount. The point is not the 11 crores, but how close you can get towards it. So I've seen people where they've required a 3 crore retirement corpus, but they've only got till like 30% or 40% of it. But they've been able to live with it quite good. But one thing that is very, very important is putting our best foot forward to get to this goal as much as possible. Maybe 50 or 60% of the goal value is enough. But what happens? What if is the question that you need to ask yourself. So that is where, the power of an SIP, the power of a step-up SIP comes in place. Nothing beats disciplined investing, and nothing beats disciplined investing when you keep stepping up your investments. Okay, now we'll broadly go over, how multi-asset investing can work for you. See, building a portfolio is not a one-pronged approach. It's not even a two-pronged approach. It's a multi-pronged approach. So how do you go about it? You need to have some fixed income in your portfolio, such as what Vinayak talked about, something like a emergency fund. These things need to be kept in a very safe place so that they can kind of aid you whenever it's required. So what are these kind of things? These can be deposits, these can be government savings scheme, these can be your debt funds, these can be your bonds. All of these will form your fixed income portfolio. Now, secondly, you need some kind of a hedge in your portfolio. Gold, silver, the sovereign gold bonds, mutual funds, ETFs are all kind of a very, very good way to play precious metals. Why do you need precious metals? Precious metals kind of act as a hedge in your portfolio. So, when there is a risk off scenario, people, usually tend to go towards buying gold and stuff. Thirdly, you need equity. Equity is going to be the major driver of your portfolio. This is where, this is going to accelerate your return over the long term. This will kind of give you returns on par or even slightly higher than what you need towards achieving your goals. So stocks, mutual funds, portfolio management services or PMSs, or all of these kind of form your equity kitty. Lastly, you need global investing as well. So why do you need global investing? Why do you need to invest maybe in the US or things like that? It's because a year or two when going back to the quilt, a year or two when Indian equities don't do well, maybe global companies might do well. There are fantastic companies outside of India as well who kind of can put their best foot forward as well. So if you can have all of these in your portfolio, this will kind of give you exposure to everything, as well as each can be tagged to a goal. So equity can be tagged to goals. Equity and global investing can be tagged to goals where, you need kind of a boost towards the goal. You have 5-6 years, you can let the corpus compound. Fixed income can be tagged to your short-term goals. Precious metals again can be, tagged with equity or maybe tagged to a goal as well. So this will form your asset allocation. Now, why are mutual funds a very, very good place to go for? Of course, a lot of you might be investing in mutual funds. A lot of you might have an additional corpus in mutual funds. Mutual funds are suitable for each and every person. You can invest, I can invest. People with a lot of money can invest. People who are just starting off can invest. It's a very, very good way to invest. There's a lot of diversity. All the asset classes that we've talked about, you can invest them through mutual funds. So there are gold funds, there's gold ETFs, there's equity funds, debt funds. You name it, it's there. Liquidity, It's a very, very short settlement cycle, T+3, T+2, whatnot. So, you sell it, you have the money in your bank. SEBI has done a fantastic job of regulating the mutual fund industry. Of course, there have been scams that happened in the past, but SEBI has kind of put on a very, very good foot forward and kind of minimize them to a range where, you don't see or hear of these quite lately. There's a lot of variety there. Now, what is required from an investor? The thing that is required from an investor is very simple. It's discipline and flexibility. You need to be putting in money, as an SIP or a step up month on month so that you can kind of average out the market, and you need to be flexible with your investments as well. A month or two when you have an additional cash that you can spare, you can maybe go for investments. When even you have, a bonus that you want to invest, you can go for that as well. So, mutual funds kind of give you everything, with a lot of advantages as well. Picking the mutual fund is also a very, very important task. So, having a financial advisor kind of aid you in that thing is also equally important, because a difference between a bad mutual fund and a good equity mutual fund is quite large. Okay, now coming to DIY investing or do it your own self portfolios. Now, is there something wrong with it? Not inherently. DIY investing can be good. But what we've seen is that people who work or people who kind of have a business and stuff, all of your attention kind of goes towards it. Even me. After work, and maybe I want to go home, I want to watch a show, or maybe spend time with my family and doze off. But DIY investing or researching on mutual funds requires a lot of effort. It's something where I've seen a lot of retail investor focus only on past performance. While the past performance might be derived from portfolios that were constructed in the past, you need portfolios that are constructed today to maybe get that performance or slightly better in the future. So you invest for the future, you don't invest for the past. Reviews are very, very important. You need to keep reviewing your mutual funds at least a year. Fund research, there are around 4,000, 4,500 mutual funds in the market. Maybe looking at all of these isn't even a possibility. So picking mutual funds is an art, and it's an art that is backed by science and research. Only when people can do it, as a full-time job, that kind of works out well. Lastly, the point that I see a lot is assuming commissions are bad. Let's say I go to a mutual fund distributor and I'm paying him and I'm investing through a regular form of mutual funds. Now, something to note is that the regular plan of a mutual fund will kind of incur an expense ratio that is more than a direct plan of mutual funds. Now, what happens if I were to pick a mutual fund? I'll only go through the direct term. But what happens over the long term? This mutual fund underperforms not only the index but also the active fund by maybe 3-4%. Over the long term, this compounding will kind of work against you. So that is why picking a mutual fund and maybe sticking with the management, doing rough times, because the fund philosophy, the stocks that the funds hold are good, is very, very important. In DIY investing, that might be hard. Coming to the end of it, just like you need to plan to win a game, planning your finances allows you to write your own story that you want. So planning can help you much wealthier. Planning can help you chart a roadmap. Planning can help you chart a map so that you can kind of get to that final treasure of your goals. Getting your financial plan from a SEBI registered RA is very, very important, because we kind of cover all of this. We can help you get a draft a budget. Insurance is very important. We can help you review it. Choosing between the old and new regime, I see a lot of questions on it. Provide more clarity on it. Managing your loans well. Debt is something that we need to talk about a lot, and we need to analyze a lot before we need to pay. And of course, finally planning towards the goals. Yeah. Now, a lot of you might be aware of Game of Thrones. So the unseen enemy is always the most fearsome. If I know something, I can kind of go ahead. But if I don't even know what my financial goal or how much I need to invest, that is going to work the most against my favor. We'll be happy to take any and all questions that you have. Do post whatever questions that you have in the chat. We'll be happy to answer that. If you guys do have any other questions, we'll kind of be happy to take them. It can be on anything. We'll wait a few more minutes for your guys' questions. If you guys do have anything, please do post them in the chat. Oh, awesome. We have a question. In terms of finance plans as beginners, what are the checklists we need to what are the checklists we need to prepare the reviews? So there are a few things that you kind of have to every financial plan has to have. So one thing is the first thing, it's not the kind of risk that you want to take. Having insurance is very, very important because if you don't have insurance, you're ultimately going to dip into your investments as well. The second thing is kind of having an emergency reserve or kind of having a reserve in place so that you kind of again don't dip into your savings. The third thing I would say is finding out what your goals are, drafting them down, and maybe having an approximation of what you would require in today's value, so that maybe we can factor in inflation to know that, okay, how much will I require in the future as well. So if you can have all of these things kind of in place, that will be a good place to start.
In terms of mutual fund.
Okay, in terms of mutual funds, I would redirect you to my mutual fund team. They will be, we'll kind of put you in touch with them. Picking mutual funds is kind of a full-time job, sir. So, even if I have kind of a mutual fund portfolio right now, this might not work 2 or 3 years down the line. So that is why, we kind of recommend a mutual fund distributor or kind of a RIA where they can kind of help you with the picking the mutual fund part.
So also in picking up a mutual fund, it actually like differs from person to person. It depends upon your risk capacity and your term on the like tenure of your goal. So it would be a bespoke allocation.
Can you highlight the difference of an AA-assisted personal finance advisory and financial advisory services provided by a qualified financial planner? So it's very simple, sir. So let's say I go for the financial planner. One thing that an AI might not consider or might not take into account is the human emotions part. So a person might not be comfortable with investing 1 lakh, but if only when he invests 1 lakh, he can get towards the goal. So this is where, kind of a personal touch is needed, where you need to craft the plan that is not only in line with the goals, but also what the person wants. So this is something that's very, very different. While the optimum scenario, when you take a loan is to pre-close it and to end it as fast as possible. A person might taking a housing loan or something like that, he might want to, hold on for some tax benefits, or he might want to hold on because that money in investing maybe might be put to good use. So all of these things an AI might not consider, but a financial planner. Can I have your view on a small case? So like an house view, we don't go for things like small case or things like that, where it is not very transparent. The amount of expense ratio and things like that isn't normally kind of evident. So we kind of don't go for things like that. A mutual fund can kind of help you serve the purpose quite well, but what you need to know is picking the right funds, sticking with them, That is the more important thing. Things like small case and things like that, they come and go. These aren't things that are going to stick. All right, thank you, sir. Uh, I think we can close the meeting then. Thank you guys so much for attending. So I'll also put our founder's information on the page. Maybe you guys can have a look. Mr. Shyam Sekhar is the ideator and founder of ithought. He has over 30 years of investing experience. So what we kind of help with is through financial planning, through investing, through helping you pick the mutual funds. Kind of we taking on the research part, and you kind of doing the disciplined investing part. So that's how we've been doing it in the past, and that's how we continue to do it as well. So do reach out to us if you have any other. Yes. Sure,
Yeah,
sure, sure,
sure,
sure,
sure.
sure. We can do in Tamil. So that's not a
Yeah.
problem. Thank you. Thank you for your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.